I'm directionally perfect, Darren McCarthy.
I'm Dan Fury. I'm here too.
And this is The Fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, based on our last podcast, something we kind of mentioned, ancillary, I looked up opiates and opioids.
Oh, okay.
Something that I felt already kind of, I had the broad strokes here. I
Sure.
Get it.
So, in reference to your friend, you mean?
Yeah. In line with that, kind of going, I was originally kind of wondering how many people are using opiates recreationally.
Yeah. Because that's not something that you see unless you're looking for it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've never seen heroin in front of me.
Right. Like walked into a room and someone was shooting up.
I don't even know if it was just sitting in front of me, if I could truly identify it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of a funny thing. I think it's not a party drug.
Mm-mm.
You never see it. It's not like, hey, we're at a party and those people were in that bathroom doing coke.
Yeah.
And there's 7 people in there. The door is not closed all the way.
Yeah.
It's not hidden necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think with heroin
heroin's not a social drug.
No.
You're going to be nodding out.
Yeah.
In your own head.
The night.
So heroin is the one that comes to mind primarily. What else are we talking about when we're talking about opioids?
Well,
opioids, opiates.
That's actually 2 different terms.
Okay.
They're extremely related. So this is a classically, the definition would be an opiate is a term used.
I thought you were going to say classic fundamental style.
In classic fundamental style, we are on opiates right now. So we'll be back in about 7 hours.
Yeah.
An opiate is a term that just means it's derived from the actual plant, opium.
Okay.
Now, there are semi-synthetic or synthetic versions of the drug that will basically mimic the same behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where you get opioid. Okay. So it's been modified or created in a lab.
So it's the same
It has the same basic effect on the body and the brain.
Okay.
It was actually in 1804, this German chemist, Friedrich Sertner.
Of course, it's Frederick.
Yeah. He isolated morphine, essentially, from the opium plant. There are the 3 major, psychoactive parts of opium poppy. That's the plant that this is coming from. So that's where we get morphine, codeine, and thebaine.
Never heard of that one.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one either. So that's where morphine basically comes from. It was isolated from the poppy plant.
And codeine.
Now, stuff like heroin is semi-synthetic. So it's working on the same principle, but it's just kind of produced in a lab.
How so? Because you can do heroin a couple different ways, right? You can shoot it. That's primarily.
Yeah, and that's just going straight.
You can snort it, though, can't you?
Yeah, but the shooting is going straight into your bloodstream. It means, pretty much going straight there. Let me get back to you on the actual mechanism. It'll come up again in these notes.
Oh, yeah.
A couple other things here. So
this has only been around since 1904?
1804.
Okay.
That's when morphine started. People have been smoking opium for longer than that. Long time. But it wasn't isolated as, here's just the psychoactive, this is the chemical in this that is the psychoactive agent.
Okay.
That was isolated from the plant itself. But it goes back to 2,000 years BC of people, this god gifts this plant. And actually, I think it's the word morphine. This is Friedrich Sertner. He named it morphium in honor of Morpheus, who's the Greek god of dreams.
Gotcha.
And they've been kind of mentioned in myth and history, dating back a long time. And it's kind of assumed that's probably opium that they were talking about.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, entered a dream world, or this state of euphoria,
high as fuck,
given this plant, this poppy plant from this goddess or something. Like, it's like, yeah, okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, like the DMT is in all these plants, and then there are these theories that it's like, oh yeah, it's probably like where a lot of religion, like the burning bush comes from. Yeah, we had this plant, then it like burst into flames when we saw God. It's like, you just lit that plant on fire, and then you saw God. It's, I don't know how valid that is, but
hey, it's as good as a theory as most.
Yeah.
Really, when it comes down to it.
Kind of better than.
I mean, yeah, you could look at it that way for sure.
I have this is kind of a longer paragraph, and I can quote directly to Nora D. Volkow. She's a doctor and the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Okay. I kind of like this paragraph just as a descriptor of how opiates and opioids work in the brain, and I think she says it fairly succinctly better than I would. So I'm just going to read this, and this was at like a committee meeting in the Senate in response to like the rising drug crisis in the United States. This is from January 2016. Quote, both prescription opioid drugs and heroin work through the same mechanism of action. Opioids reduce the perception of pain by binding to opioid receptors, which are found on cells in the brain and in other organs in the body. The binding of these drugs to opioid receptors in reward regions in the brain produces a sense of well-being, while stimulation of opioid receptors in deeper brain regions results in drowsiness and respiratory depression, which can lead to overdose deaths. Presence of opioid receptors in other tissues is responsible for side effects, such as constipation and cardiac arrhythmias. The effects of opioids are typically mediated by specific subtypes of opioid receptors, mu, delta, and kappa, that are activated by the body's own endogenous opioid chemicals, so endorphins and enkephalins. With repeated administration of opioid drugs, prescription or illicit, the production of endogenous opioids decreases, which accounts in part for the discomfort that ensues when the drugs are discontinued, and that's the withdrawal. So it's messing up your body's production of the naturally occurring endorphins, because it's just blocking them out. It's binding to the receptors in your body. So then if you stop taking that, your body's stop producing these naturally occurring ones, and then you have just days, weeks of months of withdrawals or cravings to get back on
intense.
Yeah.
So, man, I have so many questions.
In the mid-90s, early to mid-90s, they began to be treated or used to treat chronic pain. There's another doctor in the early 80s who said, well, if you just take the prescribed dosage for the prescribed amount of time, there's not really any risk of dependency. So it started to downplay like the seriousness or like the strength of these chemicals. And then in the 90s, when like pain became a vital sign, treating pain became an obligation. So people would show up saying, oh yeah, I have this like back pain. I'm always in pain.
Yeah.
So then you started getting prescribed these medications just for pain because it was mandated. It's a vital sign. But then you get into this weird gray area of like, how much pain are you in? I'm at a 10. I need that.
Yeah, I'm going to need that.
And then the patient's body just stops producing any sort of endorphins. Like you're never going to stop taking this stuff.
Right.
And if you stop, your body's already shut down production.
Yeah, you're going to have a hell of a time.
Yeah.
So is that mostly stuff like codeine?
Oxycodone.
Yeah. Codeine isn't that like Tylenol 3 or something? Isn't that like the...
Yeah, there's like acetaminophen coated with codeine. So it's like Tylenol with a little dusting of that. A little something on the top.
That good stuff.
Which I've been prescribed that. Like when I made wisdom teeth.
I'm pretty sure I've had that too. Yeah.
I've never really needed painkillers.
I don't remember why I had it. I know it wasn't that much. I do remember... What is Vicodin an opiate?
Yeah.
Opioid? Because when I was 7, my little sister's listening to this. But when I was 17, my friend and I took some of my mom had some Vicodin in the medicine cabinet.
Which she was selling on the side?
No, definitely not. I took 4. I am not a drug user. We were just...
Yeah, because you just ran out.
17.
Took all 4 of them.
Yeah. was 17 and just, curious. I didn't know what I was doing. I remember laying down and my brain telling my arm to move, and there was nothing.
Yeah.
Just couldn't. And I wasn't like out of my mind. I was just kind of, ooh.
Yeah.
4 is too many.
Yeah. Well, for now. But
Right.
if you kept doing
it, then you got to take 20.
Build up a tolerance. Yeah.
Yeah. And that shit is expensive.
Yeah. Hence the heroin resurgence in the last couple of years.
Cheaper prescription drugs.
It's about 1/5 the price. It's
Oh
way
my
easier
Lord.
to get. So all these people that were prescribed painkillers starting back in the 90s, like as just, you need this.
Yeah.
Instead of just taking it for 2 weeks, they're taking it for years. And then all of a sudden, the medical community kind of goes, whoa. Did we fuck up here? Nah, let's just stop.
I mean, they like it.
Prescribing.
They buy it.
Yeah.
Gotta.
So they
demand.
they stopped prescribing it just kind of freely.
Mm. Wasn't it initially mostly the reverse? That people were getting off of heroin and migrating to pills?
I'm not sure if that's necessarily, it was like they're getting off of heroin.
Right.
I think that it was a legal way to get.
Yeah, it was much easier to get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, without going to jail.
Yeah.
If it was prescribed.
Right.
But I don't know if people kind of going, you know what, heroin, too much of it. I think if people that were probably already using heroin,
yeah,
would have been going.
I mean, but
I think that it might be talking about two different
using
tracks.
a needle, not using a needle.
I don't think it matters if you're already using heroin.
Right.
I don't think.
Whatever you got to do. Stick it in between my toes.
Yeah, what do I got to do here?
Ugh.
Yeah. And you eat this whole couch to get the heroin that's in the cushions?
I'll do it.
I'll do it.
Do you know when the word heroin shows up in the vocabulary?
I can look that up pretty quick. I thought I had it.
I guess this goes back to how did heroin get created?
Right.
Because it seems like it was only really coming to, mainstream recreational use in the 50s.
Well, morphine,
60s?
I mean, we're kind of talking about different forms of all the same basic
From
effect.
the same resource.
So like the poppy plant, the opium derived from the poppy plant.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the source of, it's all doing the same stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can look up the history here of heroin. So it was 1895. Yeah, so basically throughout the 1800s, starting in 1804, when the psychoactive portions of the poppy plant or the opium were isolated, after that, people started kind of like tinkering with it.
Right.
So in 1895, I did look this up. The German drug company Bayer marketed the heroin as it was a trademark name.
Oh,
so it was a drug company.
There's a lot of history of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is an over-the-counter drug.
Bayer.
Yeah, and derived from the Greek word heros because of its perceived heroic effects upon the user.
So in what form was that?
Yeah, so
was it a liquid?
It was. This was developed. It was developed as a substitute for morphine for cough suppression.
Huh.
And it did not have morphine's addictive side effects. So at this point, this is like 100 years after it was kind of isolated. Yeah. Morphine was already a recreational drug, which I was just listening to a biography about Custer, and they were talking about some of the morphine usage that came out after the Civil War. Yeah. So all these, like they had this, we blew your leg off, but here's some morphine. You're not going to give a shit about that. And then people were just hooked on morphine.
Yeah.
So this kind of opiate in popular culture or in a huge section of the population goes back a lot further, I think, than what we think of. But I mentioned
heroin as a cough suppressant. Oh boy.
I would be fairly surprised if it was injected at this point. It's probably more like a pill, I would think.
You would assume.
Yeah, and actually it kind of gets back to people changing the form a little bit. So a lot of times now, when you get like an opiate painkiller prescribed to you, it's a time release capsule. Mm-hmm. So you don't have, here's like this huge, it's a safety device.
Yeah.
So you can't
blast you away.
Yeah. And you can't just, I'll take this and or take 3 and they're just going to hit me. It's like, no, they're going to actually just meter out over hours and hours and hours. You're never going to get that euphoria feeling. But what people will do is take those time release ones and just crush them up.
I was going to say.
And just break that apart. And you snort smoke it, or shoot it.
Then it'll
from there.
Get right in there.
Yeah. And here's a timeline for opiate withdrawal. So if you take your last dose, it depends on like what kind of opiates you're taking. So like if you're taking short acting, just these are ones that hit you right away, within 6 to 12 hours, you start having withdrawals. If you take the long acting ones, it'll be 30 hours. And then within 72 hours, your symptoms will peak. You'll have possibly nausea, vomiting, stomach cramps, diarrhea, goosebumps, depression, and then cravings for sure. Yeah, so here's the early withdrawal symptoms. Tearing up, just like gonna cry. Muscle aches, agitation, trouble falling and staying asleep, excessive yawning, anxiety, nose running.
Excessive yawning.
That would get annoying as shit. Sweats, racing heart, hypertension, fever. And then the late withdrawal symptoms are the nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, cramps, depression, and all that stuff. There's a couple different options for detox. One of them is a medical detox. And so that uses some other pharmacological, like other medications to kind of get in there. And then just psychological, like therapy treatment.
I would imagine you would definitely need therapy if you're going to do it right.
Yeah. But I think that if you just quit cold turkey, it can really crash your system. Like you could die. Yeah. So I think people just kind of go, all right, that's it. I'm just quitting cold turkey. Like your body might just shut down. Yeah. That's not great.
Isn't, what's the methadone? Is that?
Methadone. But that methadone is, I think, the second most abused drug.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is terrifying.
Yeah.
You know? One of the things that got me interested in doing this topic, the other day I was at work and I was on break and I was looking at my phone, like at my news aggregator, just 2 articles, and it caught my eye because they were right next to each other. And one of them was 1,300 children are killed by guns in the United States every year. And right next to that was 1.5 million people are hospitalized because of opiates every year. The 1,300 children killed by guns, I was like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And the 1.5 million, it's just like, that's just a big ass number.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And then I looked into, I looked into both those stats, and the 1,300 children killed by guns, I think like 65% or 68% were homicides. Because you kind of think, oh, it's a 4-year-old who finds a gun, and like that was like my initial thought. But a lot of it, they're counting up until the age of 17. So I think there's a lot of like people between the ages of 14 and 17. That's where a lot of this is happening. 35% were suicides.
Oh, wow.
And
35%?
Yeah, like find their gun or find their parents' gun.
Yeah.
The accidental shooting, like the kids finding the gun, was I think like 6%. But the vast majority was like, they're being shot.
Just murder.
It's murder. It's murder. Children murder, but it wasn't. But you read that headline, and it's like my initial thing was like, oh my God, it's a lot of kids finding guns.
Right.
So then we looked up like the total number of overdose deaths for opiates in the U.S. And it's somewhere around like 60 to 64,000 per year. It's like the last couple of years, it's been where we're at. And it's been going up. Yeah. And it's been going up every year.
So a lot of hospitalizations.
Yeah.
But a much smaller number of actual overdoses.
Yeah. I mean, well, they're overdoses, but they don't die.
Right.
Right. So you have
lethal overdoses.
Hundreds of thousands of people that are overdosing.
Yeah.
Or seeking treatment or whatever they're doing. But there's actually somewhere around 60 to 65,000 that are dying. So then we looked up...
That's kind of surprising.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. The next thing we looked up was all of the actual just gun deaths in the United States. And every year is 30,000, 30 to 33,000. And then we looked up all of the automobile deaths, and it's around like 30, 35,000. So just the opiate overdose deaths every year is just under all of the gun deaths and all of the car crash deaths in the United States every year.
Yeah, it's double each of them individually.
Right.
But it's pretty on par with.
Which I would not have thought that.
Me either.
For like actual overdose deaths, I would have said like 10,000, 5,000.
Actually, it seemed low to me. I don't know why.
That did? 60?
Yeah. 60,000. I mean, that's a lot of people, but a drug like heroin or, its counterparts seem like the most deadly drug available to users. Marijuana doesn't kill people. Cocaine overdose is not as prevalent as they used to be, I don't think.
Yeah, and I think with opiates, it's a combination with like benzodiazepine, and those are it's a central nervous system depressant, like i.e. sleeping pills.
Yeah,
and
benzos.
If you're combining those two things, you're basically just like you're going to sleep and you're never waking up.
Yeah. So we're So this is a general opioid overdose?
Yeah.
So do you know how much of that is heroin or how much of it is prescription drugs? So that'd be interesting.
Heroin death rate in 2013 was 8,300.
That's wow.
Yeah.
Maybe not as many people are doing this as I assumed.
That was 2013. That quadrupled from 2003, like in a decade.
Oh, wow.
And that's another thing too. So,
damn.
Yeah. Right now it's about 91 people a day die. And about 1,000 people are treated in emergency departments for not using prescription opioids as directed.
Yeah.
So that's just like the emergency here got to show up.
Like me.
Yeah. Like people that just take 4 pills for no reason. The most common drugs involved in prescription opioid overdose, this is from the CDC. Most common drugs involved in prescription opioid overdose deaths include methadone, oxycodone, and hydrocodone. So Oxycontin and Vicodin.
Yeah.
So between 1999 to 2015, the rate essentially quadrupled.
Wow.
Because it seemed like heroin went away, but it was kind of like sneakily replaced by just pills, like opiates.
See, that's what I was talking about when it seemed like there was a shift.
It's the same thing. It's doing this. It's filling.
But you used to hear about heroin a lot, especially in like musicians in the 90s. You immediately think of Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
Lane Staley. You think of heroin chic.
Yeah.
Early mid 90s. Yeah, and then early to mid 2000s.
Mm-hmm. So I said
a lot of
just 8,600 in 2013 for heroin. 2015 was just under 13,000. 2 years later.
It's a big jump.
50%, or 50% jump.
Almost.
In 2012, 259 million prescriptions were written for opioids. Which is more than enough to give every American adult their own bottle of pills.
Holy shit.
4 in 5 new heroin users started out misusing prescription painkillers.
Huh.
94% of respondents in a 2014 survey of people in treatment for opioid addiction said they chose to use heroin because prescription opioids were far more expensive and harder to obtain.
So this is where we get into the opioid epidemic.
Yeah.
This influx of various types of pills that are much easier to get than your standard,
You don't have to go to a drug dealer. You go to a doctor.
Who is a drug dealer. Yeah.
But he's got a lab coat.
Yeah.
But then he says,
a set price.
Yeah, I'm not giving this anymore. Your insurance will pay for it.
Yeah.
We can't give this anymore. It's an epidemic. And they say, all right, but I need something. Like, yeah.
Something's got to get in me.
Yeah, we don't. Fresh out. All right, cool. I guess I'll go try to buy some pills somewhere else. And then they can't find pills. And then it's heroin time.
Yeah. It's heroin time.
In 2015, 276, this is for adolescents, 276,000 adolescents were current non-medical users of pain reliever, with 122,000 having an addiction to prescription pain relievers.
Whew. a teenager?
In 2015, this is between 12 and 17 years old.
Yeah, that's not good.
2015, an estimated 21,000 adolescents had used heroin in the past year. So a lot of people are using it, they're just not dying.
Right.
But then there's still people having these pills they don't use. Those are just lying around.
Mm-hmm. What's the specification of black tar heroin?
I think it's just cut with other chemicals. Like it was derived in a different way. I can look it up, but
because it actually does resemble tar.
Yeah,
but there are types of heroin that are actually white.
It's probably just
it looks
purity.
more like.
I think it's just a purity thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. The last time I did black tar heroin, I didn't really ask a lot of questions. Yeah, so it's a crude processing method. So it's just impurities.
Bullshit.
What a bunch of bullshit. So this is of the 20.5 million Americans 12 years old or older that had a substance use disorder. So could be anything. In 2015, 2 million had a substance use disorder involving prescription pain relievers. Mm-hmm. And 591,000 had a substance use disorder involving heroin.
Wow.
Pills are way more.
Yeah.
4 times more.
So is it a myth that poppy seeds will test positive on a drug test?
I've heard that a few times, but I don't.
What's the connection there?
I mean, it's chemically, it's in there. It just hasn't been. It's kind of like it has to be processed to get the psychoactive side of the poppy plant to activate.
I guess I don't even really know what a poppy plant is or what it looks like or what are the components.
I mean, they're basically it's flowers.
So the seeds are edible.
Yeah.
And the flowers are what you derive.
I think it's from the seeds. Here's a poppy.
Really?
Yeah. That's a poppy.
That's
kind of a nice red flower.
I mean, poppy seeds are everywhere.
Yeah.
I just ate a lemon poppy seed cookie.
You feel anything?
No, I feel fine.
The earliest reference to opium growth in use is in 3400 BC.
Wow.
When the opium poppy was cultivated in lower Mesopotamia, referred to as the hulgil, the joy plant.
The joy plant.
Yeah. I kind of get the sense too that the process to derive opium from poppy plants that'll get you on a list.
Oh yeah.
Looking that up. It's like, can we look up a bomb making manual?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's from the seed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, there must be a shit ton of poppy seeds then if we're just dumping them in muffins and cookies and then we're whipping them up into heroin and morphine and all kinds of shit.
Yeah. Oh man. A bunch of people like on opium and opium dens. And this is the term hippie. That's where it comes from.
Is it really?
Yeah. You lie on your side when you smoke opium.
Holy shit.
Hippie.
This is the best part of this show. I did not know that. Good job.
Yeah.
I feel like we're all over the place. And I feel like I have so many more questions.
Well, I mean, it's
totally interesting though.
It's really, well, my favorite descriptions of the danger of this is with alcoholism, there's a genetic side of this. Like you might have this gene of it's a disease, or it's not even a disease. It's like it's in you. You have that genetic makeup that makes you an alcoholic, and either you get treatment or you just white knuckle it through life and you don't drink. With opiates, anyone, any age, any occupation, any education level, any income level,
right?
Doesn't matter. You have the potential to get hooked, which that's
once you are hooked, it's hard.
It's gonna be really difficult to get off.
Yeah.
In the last 16 years, more than 183,000 Americans have died from overdoses related to prescription opioids.
Yeah, that's not okay.
There's also those distinctions there. Like that's from prescription opioids.
It means that at least from the origination, a doctor prescribed those to someone. Doesn't necessarily mean that those someones took them. They may have sold them to other people who then died because they were dumb and, didn't use them the way they were supposed to.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't supposed to use them. That's the problem. Using them when you don't need them.
Yeah.
Or using them when you need them, and then you get addicted, and then you got to keep.
And then once you can't, you need the heroin.
Yeah.
So this kind of sums this up pretty well too. I mean, this is something that's been brewing, I think, like this rise of like heroin use, and it's really bad in New England right now. Fatal overdoses involving the quote unquote natural, semi-synthetic, and synthetic opioids, morphine or derivatives of morphine, oxycodone, Vicodin, methadone. The fatal overdoses fell between 2010 and 2015. In that same time, the percentage of fatal overdoses of heroin tripled.
Whoa.
So in 2010, 29% of the fatal overdoses involved like the morphine, oxycodone, Vicodin, like those derivatives.
Yeah.
And only about 12% involved methadone. And then 5 years later, the morphine, oxycodone, that stuff was down to 24% of fatal overdoses, down from 29. So it fell 5 percentage points. And the methadone was cut in half to 6%. And in contrast, in that same time period, fatal overdoses involving heroin went from 8% to 25% of total fatal overdoses. So it's like the total number of overdose deaths isn't changing. It's just it's what's doing it. There. The greatest increase was in adults aged 55 to 64.
What?
That's the greatest increase. So, that could mean they went from 1% to 6% or whatever, right. The group with the highest overall rate of fatal overdose was 45 to 54.
Huh.
The percentage, this is crazy. The percentage
Check this out.
Yeah, the percentage increase of drug overdose deaths among adults aged 55 to 64 rose from 4.2 per 100,000 people in 1999 to 21.8 in 2015 per 100,000 people. 5 times more people.
Whoa.
Yeah, and then in 2015, people between 45 and 54, they had the highest death rate from drug overdose, 30 deaths per 100,000 people.
Obviously, I don't know. Well, I guess maybe I have an inkling, but I've never had any curiosity into what it would be like to do heroin.
Yeah.
Or and I guess heroin seems like the most demonic version of all this, even though it's all related. But just the idea of shooting something into you, and what the effect is. I mean, it's not like you're.
And I think that's
going to do
stuff. This was indicating too that's not people's first choice,
right?
Like they were just getting prescription drugs from their doctor, and then that stopped.
Yeah,
and then it was like, well,
but
fuck it.
But before that, it was the opposite, and people were seeking that out, and I just can't imagine that.
Yeah, but I think even then, that's where like that. I don't think marijuana is a gateway drug to heroin.
It doesn't seem
to be the same crowd.
Yeah, I don't see that path.
But I think that there are some baby steps to get to just shooting heroin.
Yeah.
Or,
of course.
And then here's the other thing too. With this increase in people addicted to these painkillers, the opiates, the number of neonatal, like babies born, basically in withdrawal, has skyrocketed.
That's fucked. That's super fucked.
Yeah.
Didn't Seymour Hoffman, he died of a heroin overdose after being clean for quite a long time?
And then, your tolerance will drop drastically. So you could be a person who's taking 80 pills a day, and then you taper off, you get off of it like quick, or even go cold turkey and you have a really shitty couple weeks. And then a few months goes by and you relapse. Well, you were taking 80 before, and you say, well, I'm just getting right back into the
I remember how to do this.
You take half of it and you die. Like your body is, your tolerance is gone.
I hope I'm remembering this correctly, but I believe that they found, several bags of heroin, and he hadn't even gotten to, all of them before he had overdosed because he just hit it too hard.
Yeah.
And he had been sober for like, I don't know, a decade or something. He'd been clean for quite a while.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Did you look into other celebrity deaths?
Well, I just saw that, fentanyl, the drug that basically killed
MJ?
Prince. That
what am I thinking of? What was it that killed Michael Jackson?
That might have been fentanyl too. The most significant drug being the anesthetic propofol and the
propofol.
Yeah.
So fentanyl, what is that?
Fentanyl is another opiate, and that's what Prince basically OD'd
What was
on.
he doing that for?
I think it was probably prescribed.
I had just heard, I think today, some story about how he was actually hiding an illness.
Yeah, I think he had like a ton of hip pain, actually. I think from all just years of doing the splits and everything. I mean, I think
that makes sense.
But then
I think there was some sort of obviously he was managing pain of some sort.
All right, so here's this. Fentanyl is a tricky drug.
Oh, it's tricky.
It's available legally with a prescription and illegally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also 50 times stronger than pure heroin.
For the listener, I just tilted my head back and closed my eyes in disbelief.
You got hit by a
fucking 50 times? Holy shit. Why would you ever do that?
Yeah.
If you knew that.
No, you don't though. Your doctor's like, yeah. Oh, your hips hurt? Listen, Prince.
No. Take 4 Vicodin. It feels pretty good.
You can't feel your arm.
Yeah, can't move.
Yeah.
Why would you need... Oh, my... Man, that's
Isn't that crazy?
That is really crazy.
That's just like a doctor will give that to you. Oh my God. And a lot of this stuff too is like, yeah, so there's this company, Purdue Pharma. They came out with Oxycodone.
Mm-hmm.
It went on the market in 96. Yeah. So in the early 90s, the number of painkiller prescriptions filled at U.S. pharmacies increased by 2 million to 3 million each year. Wow. So now let's think about that.
Wow.
Morphine was, by the late 1800s, was a recreational drug. It was a painkiller.
Yeah.
But
these days, I only ever hear of morphine in like extreme pain situations.
Yeah.
Like you've been in a major car accident, broken a bunch of shit.
My grandfather had surgery 15, 20 years ago. And he had a little button that he could like self-administer morphine anytime he felt pain. And there's
there has to be a limit.
There's a limiter on there. So like it's only sometimes in an hour.
Boop, boop, boop,
but it's still up to him to decide when he feels pain enough that he needs morphine.
More.
Yeah. Which you think, all right,
more.
How long is my hospital stay?
Yeah.
Say it's a week, because it's serious enough that you have a morphine trip.
Right.
Or say it's 2 weeks. You've been using morphine for 2 weeks. And when you leave, they're going to give you a prescription for some more painkillers to take with you.
Vicodin.
Maybe another 2 weeks. So it'd be a month that your body's been replacing the naturally occurring endorphins in your brain with these opiates or opioids. So then how the hell are you not addicted?
Very, very slippery slope. Yeah. I mean, you are.
You are.
At least.
And then so you've been out for 2 weeks, you go in for a checkup.
Your brain wants that shit.
And you kind of go, yeah, I still feel a little pain. Like, oh, cool. Well, did that Oxycodone work for you? Sure did. Yeah.
It sure did.
It did for a little while. Okay, I'll give you a little higher dose. I mean, it's like within like a month and a half, you're on the way.
Yeah.
So Oxycontin, I mean, it was marketed by Purdue Pharma as basically a way to just treat chronic pain, which is just, I mean, it just makes you not feel pain.
Right.
It doesn't treat anything.
Yeah. Just turn it off.
Yeah. they were saying they do not have serious medical side effects. A year after, so they had this marketing video that comes out.
Yeah.
A year after the video comes out, the overall number of opioid painkiller prescriptions filled jumped by 11 million. So
wow.
This is also another thing too, that, the fact that like drug companies can market directly to the public.
Mm-hmm. Commercials.
This is something too that I noticed a huge shift in my own life. I don't remember a ton of drug commercials when I was a little kid. Maybe I wasn't, paying attention.
Not as much, but I mean, it is true. There's a lot more advertising for pharmaceuticals, and there's always the largest part of the commercial is the list of possible side effects.
Yeah.
It takes so long to get through, and it's usually like the adverse effect of what you would want from the drug. And could be associated
it's often
with it.
Like extreme euphoria, suicidal thoughts, anal leakage.
Yeah. Running the gamut.
Yeah. My dad
was
prescribed something. I forget what it was a couple of years ago. And one of the side effects was the urge to commit crime or something like that.
I just want to do a crime.
I just want to cheat on my taxes. Yeah. In the year 2000, this company that was making Oxycontin, and it still does, in 2000, took out ads for Oxycontin in like all these medical journals just across the country. And then in 2007,
is Oxycontin?
It's Oxycodone. It's a semi-synthetic version of.
But is that like opium. Is there a brand name for that?
Oxycontin is the brand name.
Okay.
Yeah. So within 7 years, the company and then 3 of its top executives, they get charged with like misleading the public for downplaying any addictive.
I mean, how could they not? I mean, obviously they did know that. If they did any trial research at all.
Right. So these 3 executives that were kind of brought directly into it pleaded guilty, and the company settled with the U.S. government for $635 million.
Ooh.
Which is probably nothing compared to what they've made,
That's a lot of money.
It sure is.
Wow. And we still have it today.
Yeah.
Cool. There's so many. I mean, how long is the list of opioids?
It's pretty long.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think that you're talking mostly about like derivatives of from opium.
Codeine seems to be like the entry level. Like you can get that for, like you said, like a pulled tooth.
Codeine is is like one of the quote unquote natural versions though. So it hasn't been messed with.
Gotcha.
So I think it's not as strong.
Yeah. But it can't, I mean, you can definitely abuse it. Isn't there like the codeine syrup? Isn't that like the scissor?
Yeah. It's the scissor. Yeah. You're just drinking stuff that's shutting your body down. Yeah. So in 2010, Purdue Pharma, they had to make a new version of the drug with this like abuse deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
So they started making it harder to just like, that's where like the time release stuff comes in. 24% of people surveyed found a way to defeat the tamper-resistant properties of meth. Yeah.
Where there's a will, there is a way.
Another person says, most people that I know don't use Oxycontin to get high anymore. They have moved on to heroin. It's easier to use, much cheaper, and easily available.
Jeez.
Yeah, 66% of those surveyed. This is people who had been abusing Oxycontin before the safety measures were added. So like, has this had any effect? 66% of those surveyed switched to other opioids. Percocet is another one of these things. Endopharmaceuticals. I love that. Endopharmaceuticals. Mm-hmm. They said that pain medications still play an important role in treating more than 100 million Americans suffering from chronic pain. What is chronic pain?
Chronic pain?
Yeah.
I mean, consistent pain.
For me, if I think about that, I just think that's...
Is it anything that's not reversible? Maybe
is it real?
Question?
I
mean, yeah, I think it's real, but I think it certainly is an abused and misused term.
Yeah. Let's look up the medlineplus.gov. chronic pain is often defined as any pain lasting more than 12 weeks. Chronic pain may arise from an initial injury, such as a back sprain.
Yeah.
Or there may be an ongoing cause, such as illness.
I mean, I have chronic pain in my back.
Yeah, you're a person.
But it's not, yeah. I mean, it is a thing.
Enough that you would ask for painkillers?
No.
Pain is a very personal and subjective experience.
Yeah, that is true.
It's from the government site here. Pain is a very personal and subjective experience. There is no test that can measure and locate pain with precision.
That's true.
So they rely on patients' own description of the type, timing, and location of pain, defining pain as sharp or dull, constant or on and off, or burning or aching, may give the best clues to the cause of the pain.
And what drug to give you?
60,000 people a year are dying.
Right. Because they got some aches and pains.
500,000 are using heroin. 2 million are abusing prescription painkillers.
Fuck, man. There's no end in sight.
Yeah.
Really? There'll be excuses forever.
I mean, it's the medical industry. A company that's able to market legal morphine or opium.
Yeah.
And say, nah, it's not addictive.
No, it's going to take care of that pain.
Yeah, we got to treat that pain.
But you're going to be fine. It's not forever. Of course you want to believe that. But you're fucking with your body chemistry.
It's crazy.
And everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Some people might be able to take painkillers for a couple of weeks to manage some serious pain and then be okay.
Yeah.
A lot of people are never going to be the same.
The CDC director, Dr. Tom Frieden, writing in the New England Journal of Medicine, says, we know of no other medication routinely used for a non-fatal condition that kills patients so frequently.
Yeah.
That's a good way to think about this. So it's treating something that won't kill you, but the treatment will kill you.
Right. But there is an element of responsibility for the user as well. Especially, I mean, you have to assume that a lot of the deaths are coming from abuse of the thing from people who either were not actually prescribed it or were prescribed it and misuse it.
I think it's the combination of the benzodiazepine drugs as well. So it's like people that are abusing painkillers, illegally, and then get a prescription for Lunesta.
Right.
And their doctor's like, oh, you're not sleeping? Because unbeknownst to the doctor, you have quote unquote chronic pain and sleep troubles, or that's a part of the abuse of the opiates. And then you just go to sleep. You just take a nap in a poppy field. Here's another scary thing too. This is from last year, 2016. The CDC director is saying that there still aren't enough data. There still isn't enough data about long-term use. So we're still this is the beginning of this. This is most of the trials. The tests have lasted 6 weeks or less, and then they've had consistently poor results. So the data is just
right.
In fact, several studies have showed that use of opioids for chronic pain may actually worsen pain and functioning, possibly by increasing pain perception.
Because you're not healing pain, you're just managing pain sensation.
Yeah.
Because before 20, 30 years ago, you had morphine, heroin, and opium in general. But now you have all these derivatives and brand names and subsets.
Oxycodone doesn't sound like heroin.
Exactly.
Percocet does not sound like heroin.
And you know that it's, I have a loose association with it being similar.
Yeah.
But it's not heroin.
Right. That's the thing too, is that it's drug users use heroin.
Yeah.
Drug addicts.
Yeah.
I'm a patient.
Right.
I
am prescribed.
It's been marketed as removed. And I think,
what about Valium? Is that involved too?
Yeah. I didn't actually see Valium pop up. It might be another derivative. I mean, just could have been lost on the list, but I didn't see it. I didn't notice it.
Let's double check.
opioid dependence may be as high as 26% for patients using opioids for chronic non-cancer pain. 1 out of every 550 patients started on opioid therapy died of opioid-related causes a median of 2.6 years after their first opioid prescription.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Jeez. Valium is a benzo.
Yeah, so you start taking that and you're
That
using
is probably
opiates.
a common
Good night.
combo.
This is really terrifying. This is
Alcohol, avoid very serious interactions.
Yeah. This is really depressing, and
yeah,
like it kind of, it's like
a lot of people will enter into this unknowing of just how serious the damage could be.
And I think it's, I don't know, like our healthcare system has got to change too.
I mean, how is it going to change? But certainly it needs to. There has to be, and good Lord, I know it is such a major shift in thinking from treating symptoms to preventing
the
illness in the first place. And this could be a whole separate topic, but most diseases and chronic illnesses can be prevented in the first place by just making better choices, being a healthier person in general.
Yeah.
But the healthcare industry is all about treating, not curing, treating.
Yeah, it was the stitching time saves 9. It's like get out ahead of it.
Right.
Speaking of, no cancer.
Oh,
we had my doctor's appointment, but I'm gonna get a second opinion. So. Because I don't buy it.
Yeah, thanks, but I'm gonna knock on another door.
You check
what? Okay, what did you have done?
You check everything. It was just like a little basic checkup. I need to get like a new doctor because my doctor's moving.
Oh, right.
So I just had like a basic checkup, but I don't know if that's gonna be my doctor now. I don't know.
Did you get a total blood draw?
No, it was more like it lasts about 45 seconds.
Oh, then you don't know.
It's like, oh, you walked in here.
You don't know, buddy.
You walked in here.
I'll agree. You do need a second opinion.
I'm Darren McCarthy.
I'm Dan Fury, and I guess we covered that topic.
This has been The Fundamentals.